Welcome to the Palmetto Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Allison Kanuha, joined by some WMBF News familiar faces, starting at the corner over there with sports director Dave Ackert.
What's up, everybody?
Sports reporter and news reporter Tegan Brown.
Hey.
And sports enthusiast Ian Klein.
Yep, go
Love
sports.
it.
That's
Love it.
Yay,
Ian
sports
has
ball.
too many titles to decide what to call you, so sports enthusiast seemed fitting.
Easier enough.
Sometimes stand-in for extra point.
True.
Just go with sports enthusiast.
Best third-
Third string
Best
quarterback.
third string quarterback,
Yeah.
I think we
string
have here on
quarterback.
the Grand Strand. If anybody remembers watching that episode,
Oh, yeah.
that was
That was
It was a
awesome.
good episode.
we were in
Absolutely.
Los Angeles and Ian took over for our football show and just did a fantastic job. It was great.
We were watching live, and that was the greatest line.
We were literally
in
in
the
a car
entire thing.
watching.
Yes.
I think we had the Bluetooth
We were all around
going
the phone.
in the rental car. It was great.
That was for the Rose. You guys were at the Rose Bowl, yeah?
Yeah.
Or they were playing out of the Rose Bowl.
UCLA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, today's episode is really about introducing ourselves, what brought us here to Myrtle Beach, but also what brought us here in sports. So, Dave, I'm going to pick on you because you're a
Great.
man. Why don't you kick it off? How did you get here in Myrtle Beach, and what is your journey to sports director?
Jeez, that is a loaded question. I'm glad we're not under a time limit.
Starting now.
I've jumped around the entire country. I've lived in all 4 time zones all 4 of continental U.S., not counting Hawaii. We'll get to that eventually, I guess, right?
Yeah.
When we introduce you more. But yeah, I mean, I had to start as a production assistant, off camera, kind of make a highlight reel, which is how you get jobs here. You know, resumes really aren't that important in sports, so kind of had to build that to get my job. And then COVID hit, and that didn't help anything. And then, yeah, because they had to cut a department. They cut the sports department at one of my jobs in Colorado. So then I moved out to Oregon. Then I moved here, and it's been a journey. But we're coming up on 2 years in September, and it's been great. I love the people. I love the weather. Yeah, it's been fun.
But that's interesting, though, because first of all, you're wearing a Rams jersey, but
Yeah.
you're also not from, and you've talked about going in Colorado and Oregon, you're not even from the West Coast.
Yeah, no, we all kind of, I think, picked something, so I figured I'd pick this because it kind of is the one jersey that is weird. So I'm from upstate New York, if people don't know, originally.
Yeah.
Tegan is too. And most of my teams are New York teams, but then I had this weird thing for the St. Louis Rams and the St. Louis Cardinals. Growing up, I think it was the greatest show on turf era. Kurt Warner was really good. And I was at that impressionable age where I just liked the uniforms, honestly. It was before they were even good. Then they were in the Super Bowl, and I was like, wow, so the team I picked is good too. So it was always kind of a weird thing growing up, and I think it kind of helps like my sports identity because I would host Super Bowl parties when it was back when the Giants and the Patriots were really good, and all my friends were Giants fans. So it was like, and I would root for the Giants just because everybody hated the Patriots. But it was like this weird, like I always kind of felt like, why am I not a Giants fan like everybody else? So it was like this weird thing for me to always be wearing like Cardinals and Rams gear. But then I'm also Knicks, Rangers, Yankees for New York teams. Now it looks like I'm a front runner because the Rams are in Los Angeles, the Cardinals are in St. So it looks like my teams are spread across everywhere, but really it's mostly New York and then a weird St. Louis connection. And I don't even have family in St. Louis. And then it gets worse with Baylor. I went to school in Texas, so it really looks like I just have like all of the country covered with sports.
You're covered.
But I swear it started in just 2 places.
So it was like kind of geographic, but then you had this like one-off with the Rams.
yeah, it's.
All right, I'm not going to question it.
I just
Honestly,
like sports.
I just like sports. Go sports.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned, so Tegan, you're also from upstate and you're representing upstate here.
I am always representing upstate. I talk about Syracuse way too much. Dave and I have very different definitions of upstate, though, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
To you, upstate is anywhere above the city.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Wait, it's not?
No, like for me, like I'm from central New York. Like we don't say upstate. Like upstate's like above Syracuse.
Yeah.
But Syracuse is like central New York.
It
That's
gets
the
weird. So
cutoff.
that, like,
It gets blurry.
Going back to my
yes.
travels, it's like, so when you have to tell people from Texas where you're from, because they just assume Manhattan when you say New York.
100%.
So you say upstate, but then I actually lived in Plattsburgh, New York,
Right.
which is upstate, and I would have to
upstate.
tell people, oh, I'm from downstate.
Yes.
So it gets weird. But I think that's
You're from New York State.
Exactly.
Of somewhere. But you're from Syracuse. Heaven forbid
I am,
anyone say
yes.
otherwise.
I would cry. But yes, yeah, I'm from Cuse. So, Yeah, I love Cuse, grew up there. Let's see, I was 2 years old when Syracuse won the men's basketball championship in 2003. Shout out Coach Boeheim. I don't know if I watched that game. I have to assume that I was like a little tiny baby and like my dad held me in front of the TV or something. But yeah, my dad has always been a huge sports fan. He's kind of how I got into it. Followed Syracuse football and basketball because of him. Baseball-wise, he is a huge Yankees fan, and I was like, that's what I'm saying. So I was like, you know what? I don't feel like I'm at the age where I'm allowed to like the same team as my dad anymore. So I have to go with a different team. And my
Hot take.
Wait, what did you go with?
Okay. So my aunt is from Massachusetts, and so she's a Boston Red Sox fan. And so one day I was like talking to her, like, who should my team be? I think I was like 8 years old at the time. And she's like, what if the Red Sox were your team and you could like them and not like the Yankees? And I was like, I think that is a
Polar
great
opposite.
plan. Exactly. So plus they had cool uniforms, like the thing you were saying. Like
I
I
can't
liked
agree
their
to
red
that.
and I liked the red and white. I think their yellow and blue ones that they wear every once in a while, ugly, horrible. I hate those uniforms. But loved the Red Sox growing up. Let's see, I wasn't really a huge sports fan as a kid. I was a theater kid, so
Fair.
you know, they kind of don't mix. But then I got to college and realized I just love being at games. I love talking about sports. I love experiencing it. Like, there's no other environment like that where you can just be sitting in the bleachers and just walk up to a random person and become best friends because you are there for the same purpose.
Yeah.
I totally get that, because like college sports is like a big thing for me, and all my friends, I would always work college sports, and all my friends would be like, oh, we're going to the game. I was like, yeah, I'll be there. And they're like, oh, where are you sitting? I was like, no, I'm filming, or I'm shooting photos, or I'll be in the press box writing a story or something like that. So really, throughout my whole college career, I got the best experience of college sports, because I got to see things that a lot of people didn't, which I think is like a huge influence on how I got here today.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. Our girl in the booth, Ashley, over there, she is a massive Boston Red Sox
Yes.
fan.
Yes,
She's
she
from
is.
Massachusetts too. So that's, but I think she might argue you on the red or the blue and yellow jerseys.
I think
she
they're
likes
so
them.
strange. I think it's.
Oh, I heard her clap just now, so she does like.
she likes them. Yeah. So.
That's awesome. But we're not all from New York. Ian
Exactly.
over here is from Ohio, if it didn't give it away.
Read the shirt.
You spoiled his secret.
What does it say?
That's
Spoiler
what I was
alert.
gonna say. You know, that was kind of the lead up, and you just kind of took.
Sorry,
all my
I
thunder.
just took it
but
right
if you're
from
listening to the podcast,
Oh, yes,
you're not
I-
watching. I mean,
That's true.
That is true.
Technically, you couldn't actually see my shirt, so I guess.
So to describe it
So
then.
let's do a rewind. Okay, so now you can ask Ian, where are you from?
Ian, where are you from?
So I'm actually from Northeast Ohio. Crazy, right?
Crazy.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
So yeah,
The
you
man
were
is wearing
talking.
an Ohio shirt. For
Well, you
anybody
were
who's
saying for the first podcast, you wanted us to wear, a shirt that represented our sports teams.
fair.
Well, when you're going for sports journalism, sports broadcasting in college, they talk about you can't be a fan anymore. They
Yeah.
talk about
True.
not being biased, and I was diehard Cavs, Indians, as well as the Browns growing up. So everything Cleveland was my forte. I still root for them, but I definitely don't have that diehard fandom. Like when I was growing up, LeBron got drafted, and she just talked about, Carmelo and Syracuse winning in 2002. And she
03.
said she's 2 years old, which I don't think I'm old. But that
Don't
comment,
age us.
but
Don't
that
age
comment
us.
there, I just turned 31, which isn't old.
No.
But that
Thank
comment
you.
there made me definitely be like, wow, she was 2 years old. I'm like, LeBron, so cool story. LeBron and me, as well as Steph Curry, we were all born in the same hospital in Akron, Ohio.
Wow.
Oh.
Now,
That's a
I don't know how the genes of basketball skipped me in '93, but I never made it to the NBA. However, in middle school, the doctor said I was going to be 6'8".
What happened to the other 8 inches?
He was off. Yeah.
Got switched LeBron's card.
I don't know what happened there, but I always thought, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to go to the NBA. I'm going to play with LeBron,
Were you
but my
practicing?
last name wasn't James. I'm like, oh, I'll go 55th overall. I'll play with LeBron. I was a few years off. So once I realized I'm going to be, 6'1" average Joe, I need to find another route to get into sports. So that's when I kind of, in high school, started getting into sports journalism, sports broadcasting, being around the game, stuff like that. So went to Kent State, not Penn State. Sometimes people like, oh, Nittany Lions. No, Kent State. Golden Flashes, good old Maction.
A lot of Penn State
Action.
fans around here. Too.
But
There are a
yeah.
lot.
And I mean, honestly, if you don't get into Penn State, most of the kids from Pennsylvania end up going to Kent State. So we have a big Pennsylvania influx. But yeah, born and raised in Ohio, went to Kent State. Then I actually went to Dave's neck of the woods in Texas. I don't think we were there at the same time. I got there in 2016.
Okay, that's when I was graduating college.
So
yeah, just
I
a
ended
little-
up going to Wichita Falls, Texas, which people think Wichita, Kansas. No, Wichita Falls, Texas, which is right on the cusp of the Red River of between Texas and Oklahoma. Got my foot in the door in news because getting a sports job out of
tough.
college is tough. There's usually one sports gig for every station, and there's about 8 news gigs for every station. So I was like, I'm gonna go do the news route, wiggle my way into sports, and you kind of find that like both are similar in different ways. And ended up coming here to Myrtle Beach in 2017. So I'll be going on 7 years here. It's been great.
You're our veteran here today.
I mean,
Like,
7 years
true.
at one station is like
A
50
lifetime.
years anywhere else. in any other business,
Yeah.
usually it's 2 years and you're gone.
Yeah, reporters move a lot. And I think a lot of people, that's something they don't know is like they'll see a reporter or an anchor, they'll get really used to them, and then all of a sudden one day they're gone because they're moving on up to their
You
next.
hear that question a lot from people I've
ton.
noticed in the field.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, what happened to so and so? And I don't think people realize that most stations you sign 2-year contracts, and it kind of creates that revolving door naturally. And but for someone just sitting at home watching the news every night, you're like, oh, where did so and so go? And you kind of, if it's not a main anchor or something, it kind of just that
And as
revolving
Dave
door is super present.
Talked about, there was a time when I got here at WMBF that sports went away. Budget cuts were a thing, and unfortunately, as with usually the fine arts in the school level, sports is usually the first to go in the television level, especially in a time where ESPN is now basically 24/7. People are getting scores and highlights at the palm of their hand via Twitter, social media, whatever. They're not leaning on that 11 o'clock local news, I gotta see what high schools. But then you realize that there was an interest in high school sports, and it came back, and if you do it right, I mean, there is definitely a niche for local sports, and especially in the local markets. And I think, we've had 3 sports directors or 3 sports reporters here since my time, since they brought it back. And I think Dave has taken the baton from Corinne and from Gabe and from Max McGee and all the other people in the past who I've worked very close with trying to rebuild WMBF Sports. And I think you two are both killing it right now. And now you're bringing us in with this podcast. And
Yeah,
I think there's a huge niche that people want to talk local sports.
absolutely, and it's funny because you were talking about like there's usually one sports job. Tegan has it, and she's still doing sports and news,
Right.
because it's kind of being multi-purpose. Because I mean, certain sports don't run, or at least local sports. It's kind of hard to like run all week, have something for you to do every day.
Right. But you do find, I mean, something, I've been here a year now, literally, as of like a week ago.
Happy anniversary.
And thanks. And I mean, there are so many stories out in the community that are like those sports-centric news stories that people like care about a lot. Like I do a ton of adaptive sports. Like I think I've pretty much connected with almost every nonprofit and organization that has a hand in that here in the Grand Strand and beyond. And just meeting them and seeing what they do and talking about it is just so important. And I love that I'm able to like find that mix of sports and news.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Myrtle Beach that hosted an event for, was it wheelchair basketball?
Yeah, there have been there's the coastal
Coastal
chairman
chairman.
who.
Coastal chairman. That's
Yeah,
what they're called.
yeah. For the last 4 years they lost that championship, and then this year they finally won it. So
There you
it's
go.
just awesome. So
Yeah, but I mean, those are sports, like you said, like they're not really covered. And Dave, you and I have talked about this before. You guys get, what, 4 minutes, maybe 3 minutes in a show?
Normally, yeah, 3 or 4.
you get way less during the week than I get on the weekend. I'll do an 8-minute sports block sometimes.
Yeah, the weekend there's
Thanks
more.
to the
All you want.
Yeah, it's really only, it's like 2:15, 2:30 on our 6 o'clock show, and you get 3:30, 4:30, 4.5 minutes at night, but it's hard to, that's actually is one of the points I wanted to bring up why I like welcomed having a sports podcast, because sometimes it's like people wonder why we don't talk about a lot of things, and like, believe me, I do. I want to talk about varsity girls soccer and lacrosse, but when you try to pack that into 4 minutes, and football's king in the South and pretty much anywhere you go, it's hard sometimes. So I think this podcast, especially when we get late in the football season, this is going to be, and football we do get more, it's like a 12-minute, 15-minute football show.
Yep.
But
Still goes fast.
Yeah,
Oh,
it goes
100%.
really quick.
Yeah.
It blinks, but I think this is going to be a great opportunity where we can like actually dive into stories we want to tell, and I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for it. And you guys were kind of talking about your journeys and just the sports journey in general. And it's a struggle sometimes. You don't get the first sports job out of college, or the ratio, an 8-to-1 ratio. And so the fact that we're all here getting to do these things, thanks to more of a digital push of people turning on a podcast to drive to work, I think that's great, because I mean, most people or nobody has seen my face on TV because I'm a digital content producer. And so for the last almost 2 years, Dave, you and I started like a month apart.
Right.
I've been sitting at a desk doing news, and I love it. It's been great, but it was something our news director, like Matt, was saying, like, hey, if you want to do something, you let me know. And so for the last couple months, we kind of like worked hard to get this up and going, and I'm really excited to kind of see all the stuff that Dave has to leave on the cutting room floor of like the local sports and the varsity sports and all those things. I think it's gonna be so exciting to like give people their minute, because local, like, those are families who are turning on the TVs to watch their kids, and now they'll just have to turn on wherever they get their podcasts or
Right.
YouTube.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So.
You mentioned your position and stuff. I don't know if this was something you wanted to talk on, but tell your journey, because I hinted at Hawaii. I've gone far from like across the country.
Yeah.
Her journey is incredible. I mean, you have most distance traveled, I think.
So you're kind of making it seem like I'm from Hawaii. I'm not. However, my husband is, and so you guys went to Hawaii back in
December.
I think it was the first time for both of you.
For me,
My
not for you.
second.
Your second.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's become like a real second home. I mean, all my in-laws still live there, so that's great. But I met my now Hawaiian husband, and I'm from Canada. I'm from the Great North. Emphasis on great. I'm from the North. I'm from a town a city called Winnipeg. And if anyone follows hockey, that's the Winnipeg Jets. And I grew up there for 22 years, and then I moved down to North Dakota. And that's where I really got all of my like sports knowledge. I went to school when I was 18, didn't like it. I was like, hey, I'm just really bad at this. Dropped out, did my thing. And then when I went back to UND, like the University of North Dakota, not NDSU, let's be very clear, not NDSU.
Very different.
Very different. I really fell in love. My freshman year, the Fighting Sioux at the time, it was in the air at the time, but they won the hockey national championship. It was the most incredible thing to cover. I think that was probably like the turning point for me. I was like, this is it. I want to cover hockey. I'm a Canadian girl through and through. And watching those players, so on those teams, like I think there's still quite a few UND graduates that are now in the NHL, just like spread throughout. And I loved watching that. You see a kid go through freshman, sophomore year, sometimes they'll go all the way through graduation, and then you see them like sign a contract and you're like, I'm really proud of them, because you follow them for so long. And that's what I kind of like about local sports, and like at the station, is like you get to see them go through high school, because it's not like they're signing or like professional contracts right away and then leaving. So I really, really love that. And then as for my little, I don't know if you can see the little Toronto Blue Jays, it's unique for you guys, most of you guys are wearing something geographic. Like you, Dave, you're an exception.
Yeah, you don't count.
I ruin a lot of
But
things.
you're from Syracuse. You went to Syracuse. You have a dedication to it.
Yep.
You're from Ohio. You're wearing Ohio. That makes sense. I'm not from Toronto, but in Canada, when we're trying to be in these major leagues, there's usually only one, maybe two teams at most. I mean, I guess the Expos aren't a team anymore, but we're still trying to get them back. So the Toronto Blue Jays is like, it's Canada's team. I'm trying to think. The Raptors, that's Canada's team. So geographically, that's kind of like how we chose for those major league sports. But then on the flip side of the coin, for leagues like the NFL, we have no ties. A lot of people, if we're still going geographic, would go down and go Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers, which you'll see a lot of.
Probably Bills for Toronto people.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah,
In my head, I'm going
Go
straight
Bills.
north or straight
Yeah.
south of Manitoba is
Yeah,
like
no,
Minnesota, North Dakota, Wisconsin. But
And the Pacific Northwest, I guess Seahawks.
yeah, so it's just like wherever you are in Canada, just go as south as you need to until you hit and that's your team. That's not the case for me. I have my Uncle Ian grew up, or when I was growing up, my Uncle Ian and my Uncle Trevor were like, one's an Oakland Raiders diehard and the other is a San Fran 49ers diehard. How they picked the same state to pick teams for, no clue. But I was 8 years old and you kind of went with colors too.
Right.
Gold and red, that looks great. I look great in gold and red, I'll tell you that right now. So I mean, that's really how it happened for me too, is like, I have the one-off team, which is like completely opposite where I've lived, but everything else is really like geographic. I have a loyalty to Canada. So all the teams that I pick have to be Canadian.
That's interesting. I'd actually never heard that about the, like picking, like the, I don't know, it makes sense though, that having a national team, I don't know. You
Well, I mean, so the other,
hockey's the only
Well, I
exception,
mean,
I guess.
the Cowboys
for-
are not America's team, but that's a whole other story.
But
but no, I mean, the flip side is like we have our own league. We have the CFL, and it's either where players go to play before they hit the NFL, or players go to play when they can't get an NFL contract anymore.
Right.
So we do have some pretty good talent, and I was telling you earlier, the jersey you're wearing is actually the color of my CFL team, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and so you'll see a lot of old Rams jerseys at, I think it's called Princess Auto Stadium now, just because the colors are the same. So.
Interesting.
it's the best color.
Way to save money if you want to be a Rams fan and a Blue Bombers fan.
Rams fans need
There you
to
go.
go back to, or Rams, the team, they need to.
Yeah, they need to go back to those.
Yeah,
Or even
the
the ones
logo
when they
at least.
first
This
went
logo
back.
is so cool. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't.
Even the
new
blues.
one, and they
The blue that they have.
even had
now,
Eric
it's off.
Dickerson when they changed the logos. He like publicly said like, whatever you do, don't mess with the ram horns. They changed the ram horns, and now it looks like lightning bolts. It looks the Chargers and the Rams look the same now, and they share the same stadium. That's another reason why I became a Rams fan, is because I didn't like how the Jets and Giants shared a stadium, and it's in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's not
so
even a New
it like
York
would
team,
bug
like-
me, and I'd be like, well, I don't like that. As a 6-year-old, I thought that was silly that they played in New Jersey, and then now my team that I picked 20 years later is sharing a stadium, and one of the reasons.
I think it's so funny because I actually, earlier when we were talking, I actually confused the two logos in my head. The
Oh, yeah.
Chargers
Well,
and the Rams
The
logo.
colors are very similar now. The Rams horn now
Logo.
looks like a thunderbolt. It's
Yeah.
silly.
Well, because yeah, the Chargers one is just the yellow Thunderbolt, and like it's like the baby blue.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so then I was thinking of the wrong team. Sorry.
Both LA now. But
Both LA. But I mean, I feel like so many of the teams are now going Vegas,
Yeah.
LA, because what, Oakland, the Raiders are in Vegas now, yeah?
Yeah, they left.
They have been for at least a season?
At least
They've been there for a while now.
five,
Really?
Like,
I think they're almost going on 5 years now.
I was gonna say 4 or 5.
They were there
Yeah.
for the pandemic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were like, I think they were pretty much going into their new stadium the year Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah.
Honestly,
opened
that actually checks for me because I don't count the 2 years of the
Yeah,
pandemic.
everything's a blur.
Like those 2 pandemic years were like, they didn't happen.
Yeah.
And now everything, because like, if you told me 2020 was 4 years ago, I'd be like, nah,
Yeah, that's crazy.
that didn't happen.
Insane.
Absolutely not. But being that none of us are from South Carolina and we all end up here anyways, I think that's also really exciting for us to kind of learn. I mean, Tegan, you've been here for 7 years. I think that makes you South Carolinian.
A few more years. I think you got to make it to 10 years.
Oh, like
Be
a
like
common law
the-
marriage kind
like
of thing.
Thumbs
don't
up.
think
I
Like,
gotcha.
yeah, well, once you start saying y'all, and you know, there's
I
different
say y'all
South
already.
Carolina. There's different South Carolina terms that you start learning.
Yeah.
You know,
I had no idea what chicken bog was until I was at a high school football game and a parent was like, "You want some chicken bog?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?"
It looks like Southern fried rice. Like it looks like, because it's like what, chicken and rice essentially, right?
I've been too scared to try it, honestly. The name just
no,
sounded
it's
scary.
Bog does
good.
sound like it would be like a swamp, isn't it? Isn't that what bog is?
Yeah, that's like, to me, that's what a bog was, so.
I don't want to get canceled for this. I am very willing to try bog. Okay, I just haven't, because I know
There's
the
a chicken
Loris,
bog
we're gonna do that
festival.
on
Yeah.
Oh,
episode
man.
now.
Oh, man.
the Loris bog off, right?
Loris, and I think Merle's Inlet does one. There's bog offs, usually later in the, fall,
Yeah.
early winter,
When it's-
spring, when most of the tourists aren't down here. That's when all the fun festivals usually are.
Yeah, because
So
it's
that's when
cold
you
enough
check
for you
it
to go
out.
outside. It's too hot right now.
Yeah, but
Cold doesn't exist down here. It
Oh,
gets
it
60
does.
degrees and
When-
people put on a winter coat.
Hey, I'm from Ohio. I understand what cold is, but there are differences. 30 degrees in Ohio is different than 30 degrees in South Carolina because it goes off like a switch during the football playoffs.
I think it's a wet thing too.
I don't know if it's the moisture in the air or what.
moisturizing. It's a wet thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the moisture in the air, but you can be shooting a football game and you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and the next weekend you go and you forget
your
a
hands,
sweatshirt and your hands are shivering by halftime.
Like, sorry about the shots tonight.
But on that kind of point, though, you're mentioning all of us being from different. That's one of the reasons too. I really like Myrtle Beach is because of all the places I've lived: Texas, Oregon, Colorado, Vermont, upstate New York.
Sure.
Here is a great, Texas is really southern living. The Northeast has its own vibe that people can love or hate. And here's kind of like the perfect mix because people that are from here probably hate it, but there are so many people from Pennsylvania and from New York that here I think has the perfect mix of southern hospitality, but you're not crawled to a slow southern halt like some parts of Texas are. It's almost too slow. So I think here is the perfect mix.
And something very odd with South Carolina, there's not a single professional team in the state. All the sports teams, whether it's the pro football team, basketball, all that's in Charlotte. And then when it comes to baseball, a lot of people around here cheer for the Atlanta Braves. So there's no professional sports teams in the Palmetto State, which is very odd, I think, with how big of a fandom. They talk about Texas football is king. I think that can go for the same thing here in South Carolina. Baseball is king, especially with the Chants. I mean, that's kind of the craziest Cinderella story, maybe in college baseball, the modern era, at least. I mean, what kind of school like Coastal Carolina goes on? And I think they played Arizona that year, a big powerhouse. It's just cool just to see a fandom of people that love different college teams. And like you said, you cross different paths with Steelers transplants, Browns transplants, wherever you're from, Syracuse transplants. So,
Are you from Syracuse?
Yeah, actually I am. This is my bestie, Otto. Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of even like bars and restaurants down here that have designated themselves as certain teams. Like there are a couple of Bills bars that people on Twitter literally every single football season, even though I've only been here once. So I guess the one football season I've been here, they keep commenting on my posts and they're like, go to this bar. This is a Bills bar. You're going to meet so many people there that just go there to watch the game.
Yeah, there's Eagles bars. You mentioned Steelers. I think it's kind of crazy how, and even to your point about most teams are in Charlotte, there's a new professional lacrosse league I follow, and they're a kind of a bad example because there's only 8 teams, so you have to pick like 8 pretty big cities. But they did similarly to the Panthers. They're just the Carolina Chaos instead of, so they're not so even South Carolina got, kind of screwed on the end of, hey, we're going to bring this to the Carolina. Everything's Carolinas. If we get close to a professional sport, it's not our own. We share it with North Carolina. Whereas North Carolina has both.
That's even hockey.
The
I mean,
Charlotte.
they have
I was going to say, you're missing out on the
But
Hurricanes.
hockey, they didn't even put in Charlotte. They put them in Raleigh. So it's like, okay, will there ever be a time where South Carolina gets the sports team? I don't know what's kept it out. I don't know if it's, tax dollars or things like that, because you can go down a rabbit hole with these billion-dollar owners basically taking tax dollar money. There was a chance for the Panthers practice facility to be in Rock Hill, but the town said, no, we're not paying for this entire facility when our owner's the richest, one of the richest owners in the entire league. So I don't know if that's why South Carolina's stayed out of it. One thing we do have is NASCAR. That's kind of cool. Darlington Raceway is, I believe, the second oldest track on the NASCAR circuit. They just celebrated 75 years. And, you know, being here the last 7 years, this is a really cool time, I think, for sports fans because, you know, there's a new president at Darlington. He just had his first race as track president with the Mother's Day race, but this coming up will be his first Southern 500. Ton of changes at Coastal Carolina. You're talking a new athletic director, a football coach that's going into his second season, a legendary basketball coach stepping down. You got a new face
NIL,
of franchise.
Tons of NIL.
NIL, and then, I mean, we just...
Baseball,
Baseball.
Yeah, I was going to say baseball, too. You got Gilly stepping down. That's huge shoes to fill, but you look at Coastal and what they've been able to do at one point being a branch campus of South Carolina, and now they're out there competing, sometimes better than South Carolina. I mean, you look at what they just did a few years ago with Chadwell and the football team. Obviously, the competition's different than the SEC.
Right.
But, I mean, they're out there competing for a chance at the college football playoff, they were saying. You know, they had college game day out here. So it's really cool to see all these different sports teams. There's a lot going on with the Gamecocks constantly. You got Dabo, who is he going to be on the hot seat this year?
Right.
You know, it's been a while. Those Clemson fans, they had nothing for years. They win a few national championships, and it becomes the norm. And now it makes you think about those teams like Alabama, Ohio State, and all those teams that are somehow able to keep doing it year in, year out. And now we'll see how this whole college football playoffs. This is a fun year to start doing a sports podcast, especially for the Palmetto State, because there's all this new opportunity and new content and new storylines to follow.
And between the three big ones, there's really always almost a team that's at the top of their sport, whether it's the Gamecocks in women's basketball, Clemson in football, Coastal, like you mentioned, could be in anything. You know, you just never know when that sleeper year is going to come, and they get to play that Cinderella story every time. I think that's why the fans love it. And then here, I think it's always cool that I think just because the alumni bases are so big, there's actually more Gamecock and Tiger fans here than there are Coastal fans. I think purely just from a numbers standpoint. So that's something we cover, but we don't get to like dive into. And I think this will be a cool opportunity where we can just sit and be like that. The Palmetto Bowl too. I mean, we can just talk about that. I mean, there are podcasts and 3-hour morning radio shows dedicated to them. So, I mean, I don't want to turn it fully into Gamecocks and Tigers because we still have all of our Coastal people. But I think to be able to talk about all three, like at an extended clip, is going to be cool.
But you can even dive into sports tourism. I mean, you got teams that are coming here. You know, the Beach Ball Classic, that has a ton of history. Going back to the former Myrtle Beach mayor, Mayor John Rhodes, who passed away, I believe, in 2020. Awesome guy who had this vision of let's have all these high school basketball stars come here. Kobe Bryant played in that tournament. Zion played in that tournament. So big names come here in high school. We have the Myrtle Beach Bowl, which is brand new. And, you know, they're not huge teams, you know, big name teams, but fan bases that follow. Who wouldn't want to come to the beach and play in a bowl game versus some weird small town in the middle of nowhere next to a cornfield? You know, no offense, but I'd like to play at the beach, especially if the season's winding down and I'm not playing.
That's
for a
how the
national
bowl games kind of
championship.
got popular.
Yeah.
Is they were always in Orlando or somewhere.
They're
It
in
takes
cool
very
places.
little. Yeah,
And
very
then
little.
money kind of took over, and you do. I don't want to throw a specific bowl game under the bus, but there are ones just randomly in the middle of the country that.
Yeah.
But now you
it's like,
got
hey,
the
we get to play in a
PGA.
bowl game, but
Right.
The
I mean, you guys
PGA's
got really
here.
lucky. Like, you guys went to the Hawaii Bowl.
yeah.
And
Literally, like, just straight luck for, like,
Yeah.
being here this year.
And
It's
what
crazy.
Coastal got the Orlando Bowl 2 years in a row, right?
Orlando
Before I
the
got
last
here. I
2
mean,
years.
and that's always cool because you get to do the Disney stuff. I mean, that's just the football players love the touristy bowl games. But coming off your point too is Myrtle Beach Bowl, the Myrtle Beach Invitational for college basketball actually started it all, and they were like, "Hey,
And that
look
was
how,
a happenstance.
They
It
were
was,
like,
it was
look-
always in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
It was
it
a Puerto
got
Rico
moved.
tip-off. A hurricane whacked it out of the way, and they
So
were
they
like,
came here.
what do we do? Where do we put this? So they took it to Myrtle Beach, and it was still called the Puerto Rico tip-off at Myrtle Beach. And so they did such a fantastic
Wait,
job.
at Myrtle Beach, they just added the at Myrtle
At Myrtle
Beach.
Beach because it was such a flip. I mean, it was within weeks. of the basketball
that's
season,
right.
and we're on the tail end of hurricane season. This hurricane rips into Puerto Rico. Where do we go? And so Myrtle Beach said, give us a try. And that just ended up being a huge snowball.
That showed
It's come back.
ESPN that they could do it, so then they made the bowl game, and then now we get the Myrtle Beach Classic for the PGA Tour. So it's like things
Yeah.
are snowballing in this area, and we get those things that come out. But what Pods is the company that #1 most moved to city in the country.
yeah.
It's like, I mean, some of the stuff that's happening around here is it's
I think
crazy.
it's not even just pods either. Just like I feel like every week we get like a new, or every month we get like a new, most popular cities people are moving to, and there are like Wilmington, North Carolina, and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina are like always in the tops. Like it's just, it
like
makes sense to
us
bring
and
things.
Boise,
Yeah.
and then cities in Florida.
Everywhere in Florida.
I feel like there are just so many, like Ian was saying, like so much sports tourism, and even outside of like the big things you think of like PGA. I mean, like I covered World's Strongest Man was here 2 years in a row.
was cool,
There was a huge esports tournament with like 20 different colleges from across the country that they put their esports athletes on buses and planes and brought them all here to Myrtle Beach just so that way they could all sit in the same place and still play an online game, but right here in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. That is really cool. Honestly, I think esports is also just something that's blown up so much. I don't have I don't know a lot about it because I don't play a lot of video games, but
I don't either.
my husband does, and I'm like, hey, do you know anything about this? And usually it's like specific games.
Yeah, like they played Rocket League at the
Rocket
esports
League.
tournament. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Basically like cars playing soccer.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
It's fun. I'm not very good at it. But,
Yeah, I'm
you know.
terrible. I'm so bad.
I don't have the patience. I think that's my problem, is to just to sit. Like, you're obviously stimulating your brain because you're doing so many things, but I need to be standing up at all times. If you can make like kind
Of like VR, like the whole interactive.
Yeah, like VR. I was gonna go way less tech. I was like, just give me a computer desk that rolls around and I can just walk around as I'm doing it. Just
The
standing
treadmill walker computer thing.
Bring out like
Yeah.
a PS3, give me a wireless controller. I'm good. PS3, no, is it PS5s now?
Yeah.
What are we on?
Yes.
5?
Yeah, we're on
Yeah?
Yikes.
Oh gosh.
I'm aging myself now. You and I are the same age. We're not old. You already said so. But even then, you were talking about all the big alumni for those 3 colleges, Clemson, Carolina, CCU. I think starting this podcast now, I mean, we're recording beginning of July, we're about to head into the Olympics. So we're seeing a lot of Olympians. Dave, you would know CCU has...
Melissa Jefferson.
Jefferson.
There you go. And we also have a couple of Carolina alums for the basketball team as well.
Yeah.
So like being able to like, I know those that like those fan bases are going to be watching the Olympics for their players, and that's something that we get to talk about because the Olympics is 3 weeks. 2 weeks.
It's coming around the corner, and I mean, Melissa's story is an awesome story because, I mean, not only did she go to Coastal, she was at Carver's Bay, which is down in Georgetown, part of our DMA. So we've watched this, young athlete from the beginning. I think Gabe McDonald was our sports director at the time, did an interview with her, and then all of a sudden, boom, she's running Olympic trials with Coastal Carolina, across her chest, which is awesome to see. And now she was up there with Sha'Carri Richardson. I mean, she was right there. I mean, she could have easily beat her.
I think a tenth of a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. So you sit there and think, even if Sha'Carri, I don't know if she's how many more years she has, but I think Melissa Jefferson is definitely the face of, women's track and field at this point coming in. And it's cool to have that. We'll have Steven Schlink, who's one of our new reporters. He will be in Paris.
Yeah, that's
and
wild.
he's planning to he's created a good relationship with her and hopefully can kind of do some stories with her out there. And that's pretty cool to be able to have a hometown person that you're following, especially on a big stage with the Olympics, because you never know. This could be it for you, You'd spend 4 years preparing for this one moment, and that race was less than 15 seconds?
Right.
You get one shot. And
you got to wait 4 years. That's what makes the Olympics. I think so even to the athletes, they always talk about how this, because I mean championships in like the NBA, you okay, we'll run it back next year. You got 4 years is a long wait for professional athletes. I mean, your peak only lasts so long, and
I wouldn't say that because wasn't there? I swear I just read something today that there was a grandmother in the Olympic trials in.
What?
I want to say she was in her 50s, and she was running in the Olympic trials.
Well, there's always there's a Tom Brady or an exception to the rule.
I know
Tom Brady. Is
there
that
was
what
a
we're just deeming it now?
41-year-old running in the Olympic trials because I think she might have been the oldest, but maybe there was another.
That was Lolo Jones was 40 this year. That's actually my cousin.
Yeah. What?
So we're talking about following Melissa Jefferson's story from the beginning.
First cousin?
Yeah, I was in middle school. I remember.
I'm gonna need
she was
your
the
ancestry
favorite,
tree, please.
She was the favorite to win the gold
23?
medal in 2008. And no, it's my mom's sister.
For real?
Yes, I'm not exaggerating my cousin.
I'm just kidding.
This is my legit, like my first cousin. She was at my grandma's
say hi to her?
funeral. We were Lolo Jones. Hello, I'm sorry you lost. But it was so cool following her story from 2008 because I mean you're just. Then it almost felt fake because it was like, oh, that's my cousin I just saw at the family reunion 2 years ago, and she's like the favorite to win the gold medal in Beijing. She tripped on the second to last hurdle. She was in first place, came in 7th, and then it was one of those things like you have to come back and try again. She did. She was an Olympian again. She's only one of the 5 or 6 female athletes that play in the winter games then too, because she gave up track and the U.S. bobsled team was like, hey, we just need someone fast to push a bobsled, and she jumped on that. 2-time Winter Olympian, and now this year she just turned 40, and just the fact that she made the trials in Oregon. When I was in Oregon, I've covered stuff at Hayward Field before. It's incredible. If anyone can ever go out there, it's really cool. Just have a field for track, because usually it's a football arena and they just have track events, but it's just for track. It's great. So just to make it theirs is.
So did she take all the athleticism in your family?
Probably.
Well, you played lacrosse, right?
I was gonna say I come from. I don't want to get into. I have a huge family, so the chances are some of us. My grandpa played college ball. One of my uncles was a quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners, Ron Counter, but got hurt, so didn't get his. But he has an Orange Bowl T-shirt from back in the '80s, if I get the year right. But there's spurts. My grandpa will say it's his side, but
then
it was the other side of the family probably that did more of it.
Like I said, the closest athleticism I have is just being born in the same hospital as LeBron and Steph Curry, and
It just comes from the incubators.
Yeah, so apparently I didn't get the same formula, I guess. So.
That's funny. I don't have the same flex as you. I tried so hard to play so many sports, softball, basketball. I was always made the team just under the wire, and I never left the bench. Volleyball I tried, and then in high school at the year-end awards, I was like best navigator on road trips, or like best team spirit. And I mean, genuinely, I was always cheering everybody on, but I never touched the ball. Yeah. I was just so bad.
I don't know if you guys run into this. People always ask, like, how'd you get into this to do sport?
They're like, what sport did you play?
And I'm like, well, I, from a very early age, noticed I'm not athletic enough. Because once you get old enough and, like, you finally realize, like, oh, there's levels to this. And I think you were talking about how it's interesting is to see the great football players we've come, I say football, but all that, Melissa Jefferson, like track. But, I mean, here it's like, the Shaq Leonards and you can just see Lenore Sellers recently this year you could just watch one of their games and be like, he's better than everyone on the field, and that just continues to keep happening at each level, and then you get to the pros and you're like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, like they're just that much better than that. It's just really cool, like you said, we can watch it from like the middle school age here. Yeah. We have a girl, I'm gonna blank on her name off the top of my head right now, but set a record when she was in 7th grade for some distance run, and like competing against 12th graders as a 7th grader. So it's like, that's one of those people we get to watch that fully here for the next like 4 years. And
yeah, that's wild, but that'll never be me, and it never was. And I'm okay, because like you kind of were talking about, just sitting on the bench, that's where I decided that's where I wanted to talk about sports, because I liked watching it. I was already there. My brother was like the sports kid growing up. Like, he played baseball. We traveled baseball so many different places. And I was just always there watching. And that's kind of just like the love of sports grew out of that. And so, like you said, like watching these kids live my dream. Honestly, it hurts a little. It's crazy. And I love that. And you were already, I mean, I've been here for 2 extra point seasons now. And I recognize more of the names as we go on. And that's kind of like where I was leaning is, with this podcast, we get to talk about things that we are interested in, things we've learned about South Carolina sports. And one of those things that I'm learning is players. I'm learning these players' names. I'm learning who to watch, and thanks to all of you for Extra Point, I get to like write these names down, jot them down, and watch them grow, see where they go. I think that's a great part of this, but that's what I would say is my favorite thing about getting to do this podcast. I'm gonna throw that question to you guys. What is something, as the episodes go on, that you are looking forward to most? We're gonna go start at Ian. He's like, I gotta think about it.
I have something funny.
There's too many things. He's like, I get more airtime.
Mine now is gonna be getting you guys to eat chicken bug. That's happening on an episode. I'm gonna do
not even gonna be
everything
fresh.
I can to make
They're
that
gonna
happen.
have to like the people who don't watch are just gonna have to like listen to us.
That's
That
ASMR.
seems like
People love that stuff.
that or torture. I don't know.
All right, we've gone off the rails. Ian.
I mean, I sit there and I never really cared about stats. I mean, it's fun to look at, like, wow, that person ran so fast, or wow, Kobe Bryant scoring over 80 points, I was more interested in the player's story. How did they get there? What are some of the things that they're into, whether it's philanthropy, things like that. We talked about Lenora Sellers, because he has a legitimate shot to be the starting quarterback for the Gamecocks this year. If he's not already.
Double for us.
Yeah, if he's not already.
And then
He started in the spring game and got a touchdown, I think, on the second drive of the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's cool to watch these kids on Friday night and just the glow in their face when you go up to their coach and say, hey, can I grab so-and-so to do a post-game interview? Like, they rush home to watch whoever it is on the Friday night. Any of the 3 channels, they're turning it on. They want to see, and I think that's what we try to do, is go above and beyond for the Extra Point to get these kids that extra soundbite, to hear what they have to say, because it's exciting.
right.
Some of these kids might not get it on ESPN ever, but if they are going to get on
might be
ESPN,
the
it's
play of
through
the week
us.
for us.
Yeah.
We might catch something, and we put it out on social media, and all of a sudden Sports Center's texting you, hey, can you guys send us this video? And all of a sudden this kid, from Dillon, Hartsville, Myrtle Beach, Sockasty, wherever, St. James, boom, they're in the top 10 that I've been watching since I was a kid. So that's what I'm excited for, is to take sports to the next level, especially here at WMBF, because 4 minutes, if you're lucky, at 11,
Yeah.
it's not enough to tell all the amazing stories that are out there. So hopefully through this podcast, it won't just be us sitting on this couch. Hopefully we can add another chair over there and bring in special guests, things like that, because there's awesome athletes around here. There's awesome administration. And I think we've done a good job at building relationships, with these coaches and players, and hopefully we can kind of get to know them better and introduce them to whoever listens to this down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. I do love the person piece to it, the aspect of like getting to know somebody and how they got there. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Tegan?
I think for me, this is a way to kind of record history, in a sense. Like, obviously, because we're the coolest podcast ever, and that'll go down in history. But also, you just look at like last season for Coastal and all of the crazy things that happened. Grayson McCall injured, and all of a sudden he's out. And then his backup quarterback, Jared Guest, all of a sudden he's out. And then it's down to like the 3rd string quarterback. And here we are, like, talking about Ethan Vasco starting 5 games in a row, and we never ever would have expected that at the beginning of the season. And just, like looking at the progression of all of these things, that we have no idea what the season is going to look like for anything right now. We are just here starting this, hoping for the absolute best. But you look at, for instance, again, Coastal, like Noah Kim, they've got the transfer from Michigan State. Is he going to start? Is Ethan Vasco going to start? Like, how is this all going to go down? And just looking at how everything is going to be and just recording it on our podcast. And all of a sudden, like 4 episodes later, we'll look back and be like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Can't believe I said they were going to win 65.
Yeah, I can't believe I said that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah. That's, you said making history. This is going to be the best podcast.
Ever.
I'm manifesting that now.
We're manifesting it. It's out there.
But yeah, I agree with that. I think that like everyone's going to see it as we see it. We're going to learn with everybody else as things change and we get more time to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part about it.
I jokingly answered, but I kind of answered in the beginning of the podcast. I just think that the in-depth aspect is just the
We're saying all of this like in depth. We only get 3 minutes, and our 11 p.m. producer is sitting all there.
He's sitting right over there.
Guys, I can only give you so much time. I have to fit other things in the 11. Sorry, Kyle. But I guess that's really it for today. I mean, today was a really good introductory episode and kind of telling people why they should listen to us. And as we go forward, like I said, we're just gonna mostly talk about South Carolina sports, national sports. I mean, we have the Olympics coming up. We have, we're currently looking at Euro Cup, Copa America Cup. Like this is like a rare summer where there are so many things to talk about.
And this is our slow time of the year.
This is our slow time of the year.
There's still too much to talk about. Like you can't even.
Yeah, I mean, even in an hour, we can't fit everything we would talk. Be honest, we could sit at this couch, the four of us, for hours, and we still wouldn't have chipped off the top of the iceberg.
Right.
We didn't even talk about Bronny James.
Oh, thank goodness.
Good Lord, he's been
I'm
all
so
over ESPN.
sad.
I figured there was nothing else going on.
No.
I got
the
my
world of
Carolina
sports.
chaos slipping. That's all I want.
You did. And you know what? I'm sure it won't be the last.
I could kill 20 minutes on my own just about. People want to hear about Blaze Reardon. We can talk about.
Oh my
that's
God.
I
the
can talk
goal-
about
that's the
Syracuse.
goal.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, if you guys
like,
really want, I can do it.
you know what? Tegan hasn't talked enough about Syracuse. We should give her an extra 5 minutes.
Thanks, guys.
But no, I mean, we're, like I said, like you just kind of heard, like we just have more to talk about, and so we'll get to
But
that.
quickly, I want a shout out to all the people behind the scenes that help us
yeah.
out
Oh,
for the
facts.
podcast and just our channel in general. And then really, honestly, this might sound corny, but it's the people listening and watching, whether
yeah.
it's parents, relatives, friends, and then the people that just maybe heard about this because of the weather podcast or Are You Serious?
Are You Serious?
Like, however you heard about this, or if you're just a loyal fan that sees me and Tegan out or Ian out on Friday nights at Coastal games, wherever. I mean, we have so many people that come to us every game and say, hey, I
All
love
the time.
watching you. Thank you. And you guys are the ones that I mean, we need viewers to keep this thing going. So we need you guys.
We love you.
My
We
mom
do.
can't be the only viewer. So you guys gotta call your moms right now.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. We'll wrap up this episode. We want to thank you guys for watching us or listening. You can catch us on YouTube, or Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That is,
Wow,
I think,
that's like
That's
legit.
a lot of stuff.
that's legit, right? It's legit.
guys.
This is a legit.
I didn't know that.
This is a
so real. I
legit
know.
podcast.
I was gonna say it directly this way, but I thought, you know what? I should probably tell them because I don't know if you guys
By
know.
the way, guys, you're gonna be everywhere.
You're gonna be everywhere. Welcome.
Nice.
But yeah, so catch us where you catch your podcast. Subscribe to our podcast. Share it with your friends and family, and
maybe too, so people, if you don't know, I think it's gonna be a mixture maybe of us on here sometimes. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be a weekly every Monday. We don't have that yet. This is just our first episodes. It's gonna be a trial. It's a process, and
you have to like us first for us to
Yeah,
continue
well,
giving you
Please like
episodes.
us.
yeah, you'll have to
Please.
just be on the lookout. And I mean, we're all excited to do more, but it's
Yeah, you guys are probably some of the busiest here at the station, so you'll always see me because I'm always here. But it'll usually be a variation of whoever's sitting at this couch right now. So, but yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you in our next episode.